It was supposed to be the perfect family vacation. Sun, sand, and time spent together. But everything changed in an instant. One moment, my dad was laughing with us by the beach, and the next, he collapsed without warning. I watched in shock as he fell to the ground, unconscious. My heart stopped. I had no idea what to do. Panic set in, and all I could think was, what now? The decision I made in these first few moments, could it have saved his life? I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, but I couldn't wait. It was our long-awaited family vacation. After months of stress and busy schedules, my mom, dad, brother, and I finally made it to the beach resort. We had all been looking forward to this. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, warm sunshine, and the sound of the ocean in the background. The kind of setting that just makes everything seem right. I was excited to spend time with my family, especially my dad. We'd had a tough year. Work had been stressful, and we hadn't had much time to just relax and be together. But this vacation was going to change that. It was our chance to reconnect, to make memories. I was feeling good, happy, relaxed, and grateful to be there. I couldn't remember the last time I felt this at peace. We spent our first day exploring the resort, swimming in the ocean, and enjoying the beach. My dad, who's usually the energetic one, was in his element, laughing, joking, and playing beach volleyball with Alex, my younger brother. I watched them, thinking about how lucky we were to be together, to just enjoy the moment. That evening, we had a family dinner at one of the resort's restaurants. The table was full of laughter, food, and conversation. It felt like everything was perfect. I looked around at my parents, my brother, and thought, this is what I've been waiting for. But I had no idea that just a few minutes later, everything would change. What seemed like a normal evening would turn into a nightmare that would test me in ways I wasn't prepared for. As we finished up dinner and started to head out, my dad stood up and suddenly looked unsteady on his feet. At first, I thought he was just tired from all the activity. He had been pushing himself a lot lately, but then he collapsed. My heart dropped into my stomach. I heard my mom scream, and I rushed to his side. In that moment, I couldn't think. I was frozen. I remember looking down at him, feeling completely helpless. I could see his chest rise and fall, but his face was pale. My brain was screaming, what do I do now? But I couldn't make a move. It felt like everything around me was moving in slow motion. My brother, Alex, was standing there, staring, unsure of what to do. My mom was beside herself, calling out to him, her voice shaky with panic. I felt like I was in a nightmare, just waiting for someone to tell me this wasn't real, that this wasn't happening. But it was happening, and I had to make a decision. But the problem was, I didn't know what the right decision was. Everything happened so fast. 1 second, my dad was standing up from the table, laughing and making a joke with Alex. And the next, he was on the ground. I remember the way his body hit the floor. It was so sudden, so jarring. It took me a moment to even process what had happened. It was like the world around me stopped moving, and I was stuck in a frozen frame. My dad wasn't moving. My breath caught in my throat. This isn't real. He's fine. This is just a bad fall. But when I kneeled beside him, I saw that it wasn't just a fall. He was out cold. His breathing was shallow, his pulse weak. I felt a wave of panic hit me like a freight train. Dad! Dad! I called out, shaking him gently. No response. His face was pale, and the fear that had started as a flutter in my chest was now a full-blown panic. I couldn't even think straight. My mind was a blur. What do I do? What do I do? My mom screamed his name, and I could hear her voice breaking. She was already on the phone with emergency services, but I had no idea how long it would take for them to arrive. I had never been in a situation like this before. I'd seen it on TV, heard stories from friends, but never in a million years did I think it would happen to us, especially not on this vacation. Not here, not now. I looked at Alex, who stood frozen in place, his face pale. He wasn't saying anything, just staring. I needed him to help. I needed him to snap out of it. "Alex, help me," I shouted, but even my voice sounded distant, as if it wasn't really mine. He didn't move. I looked down at my dad again, and for the first time, the reality hit me. I was alone in this. It wasn't just about getting help from the paramedics or waiting for the right person to show up. I had to make a decision, and I had to make it now. CPR. The word flashed in my mind, but I wasn't sure if I remembered all the steps. I had taken a basic first aid and CPR course years ago, but I hadn't practiced since. Was I even doing it right? Was it too late? Was I wasting precious time trying to figure it out? My hands were shaking uncontrollably, and I had to focus. I knew my dad's life could depend on what I did next, but I wasn't sure if I was capable of handling this. My father, the man who had always been the strong one, the one who had supported me through everything, he needed me now, and I didn't know if I was enough. I leaned over him, my hands hovering for a moment, before I pushed down on his chest. The rhythm didn't feel right. It felt wrong, like everything inside me was screaming, "This is a mistake." But there was no time to second-guess myself. I did what I had been trained to do, pushing harder, faster, trying to force myself to remember every single detail of the training I had taken years ago. Was I pressing too hard? Was I pressing too softly? Every time I paused to check his pulse, I felt that surge of panic all over again. What if I'm doing this wrong? What if I'm too late? My mom was still on the phone with emergency services, her voice frantic. I could hear her in the background, trying to describe the situation, but I couldn't pay attention to what she was saying. My focus was entirely on my dad. I could feel my body start to tremble from the sheer stress. I was worried I was too out of control to help him, but I knew I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when I was so close. My hands were getting tired, but I kept pushing. Time felt like it was stretching out forever. Every second was a question. Every minute that passed felt like an eternity. I could hear the distant sound of sirens, but they seemed so far away. I needed to keep going. I didn't know if this was enough or if it would even help, but I had to try. It felt like all the responsibility for his life was on me in that moment, and I couldn't let go. Please, let him be okay. Please don't let this be the end. The confusion in my mind started to fade a little as I forced myself to focus. I kept counting the chest compressions, reminding myself to stay calm, to focus on what I knew, but doubt still crept in. Am I doing this right? Is he going to make it? Everything was happening so fast, and at the same time, it felt like it was moving in slow motion. My mind kept going back to the moment it all began. Was this really happening? Was I really the one who had to step up? My dad, always the protector, the one who had guided me through everything, was now depending on me. I just hoped that what I was doing would be enough, that my decision to act quickly wouldn't be the wrong one. I could feel the weight of every second, each one passing by like a ticking clock that was counting down to something I didn't want to face. My hands shook uncontrollably as I continued with the chest compressions, but the fear in me was just as strong as the urgency to act. I had to stay focused. There was no time to hesitate, no time to second-guess myself, but the fear that crept up inside me wouldn't go away. My dad was still unresponsive, his pulse faint and erratic. His chest barely rose and fell as I tried to keep the rhythm of CPR steady, but it felt like I was failing him. My heart pounded in my chest as I glanced at my mother. She was still on the phone, her voice trembling as she tried to get more details from the emergency dispatcher, but I couldn't focus on what she was saying. All I could hear was the sound of my own breathing, the harshness of the air rushing in and out of my lungs, and the occasional desperate cry from my mom as she asked if help was coming. I looked at Alex again, and this time, he seemed to snap out of his daze, though he looked just as terrified as I felt. He knelt beside me, and for a moment, I thought he was going to help, but his hands remained at his sides, his face filled with confusion and fear. He didn't know what to do, and neither did I. I could feel the pressure mounting. My dad needed me, and I had no idea if I was doing the right thing. It was as if everything I'd learned during that CPR class years ago had left me. My mind raced with questions. Was I doing it right? Was it too late? I looked at my father's face again, and all I saw was a man who had always been there for me. How could he be lying there, motionless, while I struggled to do something, anything, that would help? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. There was no choice now, no time for uncertainty. I had to keep going, no matter what. It didn't matter that I wasn't sure of myself, that I wasn't sure if I was even doing it right. If I stopped now, I might never forgive myself. I might lose my father forever. No, I couldn't let that happen. I refocused on the task at hand, forcing my hands into the rhythm I could barely remember, my heart still racing. My body was aching from the effort, and sweat poured down my face, but I couldn't stop. I kept repeating to myself, I need to keep going. I need to keep going. Every second felt like it was dragging on for an eternity. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and doubts. But the one thing I could hold on to was this. If I didn't act, if I let fear and doubt take over, my father might not make it. The sound of sirens grew louder in the distance, but it felt like they were moving farther away rather than closer. Why was it taking so long? The paramedics should have been here already. I glanced at my mom, who was still on the phone, and I could see her face, pale, filled with worry, and strained with the same fear I felt in my chest. She was helpless, just like me. She was waiting for the help that seemed to be taking forever to arrive. We both were. And then, just as my arms began to feel like they would give out, I noticed a subtle change. My dad's chest rose slightly more than before. His breathing, though shallow, was a little stronger. I held my breath, hoping it was a sign of life, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop yet. I pushed again, and this time, the response felt a little more solid. My hands, shaking with exhaustion, continued the compressions, but my hope had grown, just a little. Maybe there was a chance. The sirens were getting closer, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. My dad's pulse was weak but steady, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was going to make it. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop until the paramedics were here, until I knew for sure that help had arrived. The minutes felt like hours, but I kept my focus on him, on his breathing, on every move I made. My dad was depending on me, and I had no choice but to keep fighting for him, even if I wasn't sure I was doing everything perfectly. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when I was this close to getting him the help he needed. The next few minutes felt like hours. I could hear the sirens now, getting closer with every passing second, but it felt like they would never reach us. My arms were burning from the effort, and sweat was dripping down my face, mixing with the salt water from the beach. My heart pounded, matching the rhythm of my chest compressions. I kept pushing, refusing to stop, even as the doubt gnawed at me. Am I doing this right? Is it too late? The questions looped endlessly in my mind, but I couldn't afford to listen to them. My dad's life was on the line, and I couldn't let him slip away now. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement in his chest, a sign that maybe, just maybe, he was still hanging on. My breath caught in my throat, but I didn't slow down. I couldn't. This was it. The make or break moment. My dad had always been there for me. He had been the one who taught me how to be strong, how to take charge. But now, I had to be the one who saved him. Every ounce of fear and uncertainty I had felt up until that moment started to fade, replaced by an overwhelming sense of responsibility. It didn't matter that I wasn't fully sure I was doing it perfectly. I just had to do it. Then I heard the sound of footsteps rushing towards us. The paramedics had finally arrived, their presence breaking through the chaotic blur in my mind. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to keep going, even though I felt physically drained, like I might collapse myself. The paramedics kneeled down beside us, and I felt a rush of relief mixed with exhaustion. I was shaking, my body begging for rest, but I couldn't stop now. One of the paramedics gently took my place, pushing me aside just as they began to assess my dad's condition. I was still holding my breath, hoping that my efforts had been enough. The paramedic quickly checked for signs of life and then turned to his partner. "He's alive," he said, and for a moment I thought I had heard him wrong. Alive? It felt like my heart leaped out of my chest. I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. My dad wasn't gone. He wasn't lost to me. The paramedics worked swiftly, stabilizing him and loading him onto a stretcher. They moved efficiently, but the moments felt long. My mind raced with the fear of what might come next. Would he be okay? How bad was it? The sight of the paramedics lifting my dad and rushing him to the ambulance felt like a dream. It all happened so fast, but there was a strange sense of peace in knowing that I hadn't given up, that I'd made the right choice, even when I wasn't sure I could handle the weight of it. I walked with my mom and Alex to the ambulance, feeling a strange mix of relief and disbelief. My mother, her face pale with worry, reached for my hand. I squeezed it tightly, trying to steady her, trying to steady myself. We climbed into the ambulance together, my heart still racing in my chest. The ride to the hospital was quiet, except for the sound of the sirens, and I couldn't help but replay the whole situation in my mind. I thought about how close I had come to losing him, how much responsibility I had felt in those first moments of panic. But now, all I could do was hold on to hope that my dad was going to be okay. When we arrived at the hospital, the doctors took over, and I felt a new wave of fear wash over me. The uncertainty of not knowing if he would be okay lingered in the air, but after what felt like hours of waiting, a doctor finally came out to speak with us. "Your father is stable now," he said. "We've managed to stabilize his heart. He's going to be okay." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I looked over at my mom, who had tears in her eyes. She hugged me tightly. "You saved him," she whispered, and in that moment, I realized that I had. Even when I didn't know if I was making the right choice, I had acted. I had done everything I could. My father was still here with us. As we sat in the waiting room, I thought about how quickly everything had changed. One minute, I was enjoying a vacation with my family, and the next, I was fighting to keep my father alive. The decision I had made had been the hardest of my life, but it was also the most important. I didn't know if it was the right decision at the time, but in the end, it didn't matter. I had done what I could, and that's what mattered. The experience left me shaken, but it also taught me something powerful, that in moments of uncertainty, the only thing you can do is act. Fear and doubt might cloud your mind, but taking action, even when you're unsure, can make all the difference. And in that moment, I realized that I was capable of more than I ever thought. I had saved my father's life, and I wouldn't trade that feeling for anything in the world. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. My dad was in the hospital for a while, recovering, and I spent every moment by his side. The doctors assured us that his condition was stable and that he would make a full recovery, but it was hard to shake the images of that day. His body lying motionless on the ground, the panic in my chest, and the overwhelming uncertainty that had gripped me. I couldn't help but replay the events over and over in my mind. Had I really made the right choice? What if I had hesitated even a second longer? What if the decision to act hadn't been enough? These questions continued to haunt me, even as the doctors assured me that I had done everything right. But as the days passed and my dad regained his strength, I began to realize something. The moment that had felt like an eternity, when I was frozen in fear, questioning every move I made, had ultimately shown me a new side of myself. The strength I had found within myself in those moments of crisis was something I hadn't fully understood until afterward. I had always been the one to rely on my dad, the one who had looked to him for guidance and support. But in that moment, when he needed me the most, I was the one who had stepped up, and I was the one who made the decision to save him. That realization hit me harder than I expected. I had always thought of myself as capable, but facing a life or death situation like that put everything into perspective. I wasn't just the daughter anymore. I was someone who could make tough decisions in moments of panic, someone who could act even when fear threatened to overwhelm me. It wasn't something I had known about myself until that day, and it was something I would carry with me for the rest of my life. As my dad continued to improve, I noticed something else. Our family's bond was stronger than it had ever been. The experience had shaken all of us, but it had also brought us closer together. My mom, who had always been the calm, supportive one, was now more open about her own fears and vulnerabilities. Alex, who had been paralyzed with fear in the moment, became more involved in helping Dad recover. We all had a new appreciation for each other, for the moments we took for granted, and for the fragility of life. I also learned something important about my dad during his recovery. He had always been the rock of the family, the one who held everything together. But that day, I was the one who had held him together, in a way. He had always been the protector, the one who made sure we were safe and cared for. But I realized that he had always given us the strength to face challenges, even when he was the one who needed saving. In the weeks that followed, I started to reflect on the bigger picture. Life is unpredictable. In an instant, everything can change. One moment, you can be enjoying a sunny day with your family, and the next, you could be facing the possibility of losing someone you love. I realized how important it is to appreciate the moments we often take for granted, the time spent together, the laughter, the quiet moments. We can never be sure what tomorrow will bring, but we can make the most of today. Looking back, I also realized that the moment I feared most, the moment of uncertainty, when I didn't know what was happening or if I was doing the right thing, was the moment that taught me the most. I had to trust myself, even when I felt unsure. The decision to act wasn't easy, and I wasn't perfect in those moments. But the fact that I acted at all made all the difference. It wasn't just about saving my father's life. It was about learning to trust myself in moments of chaos, to step up when everything seemed uncertain. As my dad recovered and we returned home, life slowly returned to normal. But I knew I would never be the same. I had learned the power of action in the face of fear, the importance of being present when it matters most, and the strength that comes from trusting yourself, even when everything around you feels out of control. My dad was still here with us, and we had all learned something valuable. Life is unpredictable, but the courage to act when it matters most is something we can all carry with us. And I would never forget that, no matter what came next.